Jonathan is created as an informational, educational, and entertainment show. Hope with Jonathan hosts, guests, partners provide information on the basis of research and personal experiences, and is not to be taken as or implied as diagnosis of any disease or treatment. Hope with Jonathan, its host and guests and partners, recommend and encourage you to speak to your medical team before implementing any treatment or diagnosis found on this show or any product, service associated to Hope with Jonathan.
Hey guys, welcome back to Hope with Jonathan. I'm your host, Jonathan Traylor, kidney transplant recipient, who's very grateful to be here and utilizes this platform to share stories, much like what we're fixing to share tonight. Tonight, guys, all the way from the state of Maryland, we have a very special guest with us. Founder of Kindness for Kidneys International will be with us tonight. Sharron Rouse, all the way from the state of Maryland, guys. It's going to be an incredible interview. I hope you guys are ready for this interview. I hope you guys get involved and get engaged and ask questions. And I hope you guys will share this with all of your friends and family. We really appreciate all the support for our show. And again, guys, thank you for all the subscribers that have subscribed right here to Hope with Jonathan. We really appreciate you. Thanks again for Uncle Jim Myers for tuning in. Thank you. And we really appreciate it. Hey, guys, listen, if you haven't already checked this out, right here on YouTube, we share stories of hope, much like what we're fixing to share. Really would appreciate all the support. Thank you again. Check out our website as well, hopewithjonathan.com. And again, guys, we'd like to encourage anyone out there that will come across this to please sign up to be a donor at donatelife.net. And definitely, if you're going through kidney disease, you definitely don't want to battle it alone. And for support, you can definitely reach out to kidneysolutions.org. We would really appreciate it. Guys, listen, we really would love for you to drop a comment. Let us know that you're here. Let us know what you're thinking. Just drop a comment, drop a question, interact, be engaged. We would really appreciate it. We'd love to get any feedback for the show. But guys, listen, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring on Sharron Rouse. Can't wait to bring her on the show and let her share her incredible story with us. So listen, guys, I appreciate all the support. Let's welcome to the show Sharron Rouse, all the way from the state of Maryland. Let's go.
Kick.
shake it, baby.
Hey, Sharron, how are you doing?
I am well. I am well, Jonathan. I was sitting here dancing with the music. Wow, you have a wonderful, wonderful introduction. I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
Oh, we love to bring great guests on, and we got to do something special to bring you on. So we wanted to play a video like that to bring bring you on and introduce you.
It was amazing.
Oh, thank you. So, Sharron, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from, a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. I first want to thank you, Jonathan, for this awesome opportunity. I never want to take for granted anytime I'm invited to speak anywhere. And so thank you for this platform. Thank you for the millions that you're reaching and will reach. And just for bringing hope and healing to people that are dealing with kidney disease and their families. What you're doing is so important. And so I really appreciate just being asked to come on. I've seen some of the guests that you've had in the past, and it really is inspiring to see the work that you're doing. And we just met, I think, a couple of months ago, and so it's really an honor for me to be here and to have this conversation with you. So I first want to start by thanking you. As Jonathan said, I'm Sharron Rouse. I am from Maryland. I was born and raised in Maryland. Born in DC, but raised in Maryland, and I'm grateful to be here. I am the founder of Kindness for Kidneys International Incorporated. I am a child of God. I always tell people that's the most important thing. All the other stuff is secondary. And so I live in Maryland, and I have a husband and wife. We live here. And I am a kidney disease survivor, a kidney transplant thriver. And so I'm so happy to be here. Everything that we do, and I'm sure you can attest to this, it's to share our experiences to bring hope and healing to those that are impacted by kidney disease. And so that's the most important thing about me. I'm a former educator, former educational administrator, and have now devoted my time and energy to Kindness for Kidneys and really ensuring that we get the message out there that we're here as a sense of support to families that are impacted by kidney disease. It does take a village. And so I'm mindful of the fact that although I may be the person sitting in the chair, or although, someone is sitting in the dialysis chair or getting ready to start dialysis, it's not just that person sitting there. And so all of the things that we do related to Kindness for Kidneys involve the person and their families, because it truly takes a village.
Absolutely, it sure does. That's amazing. First of all, I want to thank you for doing the show with me on such short notice, and really appreciate what you're doing as well. You're doing awesome things with Kindness for Kidneys, and not only that, but you're also an advocate for AAKP, and I believe that's where we met. Actually, what was it? The patient summit or patient meeting they had. So it was really cool. You actually was like the top leader in points on that, where they were like giving away prizes and stuff. I kept trying to chase you, but it just wasn't happening.
I was relentless, wasn't I?
Yeah, it was fun
was
though. It
fun.
really was.
It really
really
was.
was.
And I mean, I just felt like, the engagement, it really increased the engagement. And so it was truly fun. And you're like, how are you doing this? And I'm like,
Yeah,
yo,
yeah,
and like everybody's profile. And so, yeah, we had a great
yeah.
time at the conference.
It was, and of course, being an AAKP ambassador is also awesome as well. I do advocate with other organizations as well, but AAKP is a great organization for kidney patients, and I love what they do, and it's an honor to be a ambassador for them, and I really enjoy being involved with them as an organization and what they stand for. So, amazing
Same here.
organization. hmm
Yeah, same
And
here. And I've been able to meet great people like you, and so that's the part that I love most. You get to lock arms with people who have been dealing or have dealt with similar circumstances and really get loud together. It makes a difference. I mean, I can do a whole bunch of things by myself. You can do a whole bunch of things by yourself, but together our impact is stronger and greater. And so that's what I like about joining forces with AAKP. I'm also recently an ambassador with AKF. And so, to me, it's about us joining together to have a greater impact, to have a louder voice. And so that's what I love
Yeah.
most about being a part of other organizations.
Yeah. Well, you've heard it a million times, but united we stand, divided we fall. So we're stronger together. And as a united front, we can make a lot of noise together. So yeah, I also advocate with NKF and AKF as well, and American Kidney Fund. They did so much for me as a dialysis patient. It's helping me out financially with some assistance and things like that. So every time there's a walk available or anything like that, I interact with it and try to get involved because it's my way of giving back to them for helping me out. So they do amazing things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your kidney disease story and how it all happened, and what disease that you actually suffered with that caused your kidneys to ultimately fail.
Sure. So the year was 2006. I noticed that I had swelling in my legs, unusual swelling. So I went to the emergency room, and that's where I received the diagnosis that my kidneys were failing. And so I didn't have a family history of kidney disease. I didn't know anyone on dialysis. I didn't have high blood pressure or diabetes or anything. I was relatively healthy. I had just given birth to a beautiful baby girl 5 months prior. And so as a result, and I will say in 2003, I've been diagnosed with lupus. Never really felt that that was my diagnosis, but that's what the doctor said. They said my ANA numbers were reflective of lupus. And so we went with it. I took medication for about 6 months, stopped, and I never had a reoccurrence at all. So fast forward to 2006, after I had my daughter, the first response when my kidneys were failing is your body is turning on itself. With the lupus diagnosis, you just had a child, and now you're having a flare, and your immune system is attacking your kidneys. And so after being in the hospital for several days and finally getting a biopsy, I just remember the hospital being really crowded that year. And I was at Hopkins, and they had to find me a bed and all of that. I don't know what was going on in 2006, but I just remember there being a shortage of beds in the hospital. And so my stay was longer than it typically would have been. And so they got the swelling down, they got it under control, and then they did the biopsy and realized that it was FSGS kidney disease. And so I think it kind of threw everyone off because originally everyone was so sure that this was a lupus related event. And they get the biopsy back, and I remember the fellows and the doctors coming into the room. As you know, John Hopkins is a teaching hospital, so there were a lot of fellows, and they were like, your case is a little different here. This is showing something completely different. This is showing FSGS. And if this had been related to lupus, there would be a different cell pattern in your kidneys. This is different. And so they diagnosed it as FSGS. And to be even more certain that it was FSGS, because at the time the rheumatologist and the nephrologist were kind of going back and forth, like, no, it's not. And yes, it's kind of this back and forth thing. They asked me to go and get another biopsy a year later, just to make sure. They did tell me that the protocol treatment would be similar, that, whether it was lupus related or FSGS related, I would still be doing immunosuppressant therapies. And so, but they wanted to be certain. They wanted to kind of get an idea of exactly what was going on. So they did another biopsy, and that's when it was determined that it was FSGS, and that's focal segmental glomerular sclerosis. And that's where a part of where different segments of your kidney cells become scarred. And it's hard and difficult for your kidneys to filter anything out because of the scarring. So it messes up your filtration system.
You said that so well, the FSGS. It took you a while to learn that one, or you just picked it up pretty quickly?
I think I've said it so many times, Jonathan, that it just comes naturally now.
You said it really well.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it. And I'm one that when I got the diagnosis, of course, I'm immediately researching and trying to figure out what it was and and
Yeah.
what causes it, and trying to think
Yeah.
back over my life, what could have caused this? And so the doctors quickly said that, there's really no known cause at this time. Again, this was in 2006, so they really didn't have as much information as what we have today, where there could be some genetics in there and different things like that. And so, I had to learn a lot in a little bit of time. At the time, my daughter, she was just a few months old, and then she turned a year old. And so trying to navigate being a new mom, a new diagnosis, a wife, and, sister, cousin, aunt, all of that.
You was
Um,
wearing a lot of different hats.
oh my goodness, it was something. But
I
it's a
can only imagine.
yeah, it's a situation that I wouldn't change for the world, because I learned so much about myself. You really learn a lot about yourself when you're faced with adversity. When you're in the thick of adversity, you learn what you're made of, and you learn what's really in your heart. And
Mm.
so, even though it was the most difficult situation of my life, I do not regret any of the things that happened, because it made me the woman that I am today.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. I feel the same way for myself because kidney disease dang near killed me. And so I didn't think that I would be the person that I am. If you'd have told me years ago I'd have a podcast and be interviewing people and talking with them, I would have laughed in your face, like literally. But kidney disease changed me, and it changed me for the better. And so I am grateful for the experience. It was a tough experience. It was a traumatic experience for myself personally, but because I crashed into dialysis and I had no education on kidney disease, and so those first couple of weeks were just very eye opening, and I was like a deer in headlights. I mean, literally, it was just like being hit by a truck
Yeah.
uh, by
Yeah.
kidney disease, and but I'm very grateful for the experience. And you mentioned that you at first was being told you had lupus, which in itself is a hard diagnosis to kind of take once you hear all of the things that kind of go along with lupus, and how it affects a lot of different things other than kidneys. I mean, it affects a lot of things. And then to
Yes.
hear that you actually are suffering with FSGS as well, or it actually was FSGS as a whole.
Yes, and I still think back to this day. I even think back to years before the diagnosis, where I would go get a physical in college, and they would say, "You have traces of protein in your urine."
Oh
And
wow.
yes, and even with the lupus diagnosis, I thought that nephrologist, the rheumatologist would think, "Let us take your kidneys." I mean, if you're spilling protein, and yes, that is a side effect of lupus, but there should be some more, testing done to make sure that it is
Hmm.
in fact a result of lupus. And so if you're spilling protein, for anyone that's watching, if you're spilling protein, you definitely want to look at your kidney numbers, and even possibly a biopsy, because
Yeah.
I think with mine, the numbers on my labs were fine. But
Yeah.
clearly, if I'm spilling protein, then there was something else still going on. And I even think
Yeah.
back to my labs that I had gotten a few weeks before, that my rheumatologist did, and my creatinine was in the normal range. My
Yeah.
my GFR was in the normal range. And so I just wished that maybe they had taken a deeper dive. Again, I wasn't as
Sure.
educated as I needed to be, and didn't even think that kidneys were a part of whatever was going on at the time of the diagnosis.
Right.
But here we were years later. The diagnosis is in 2003, and then here we are in 2006. They automatically assume, oh, this is lupus, but I had been spilling
Yeah.
protein all of those years. And so it's so important that we're educated, and that our family members know. So, now if anybody in my family is ever is ever spilling protein, I'm like, you make sure they check your kidneys, even if that means getting a biopsy, because
Yeah.
I mean, too many people are crashing into it, and it's just
I've listened to I don't know how many other kidney warriors stories, and some of them that are quite older, where they experienced kidney disease in like the 80s, in the 90s, and all of these stories that I hear are they say the same thing, that they had protein spillage, but the doctors sort of for some reason just overlooked it or ignored it as not a precursor to kidney disease. And it was amazing to me how many stories I heard in that time and era that they were just overlooking protein spillage. And then years later, here they are on dialysis and they need a kidney all of a sudden. So, yeah, if you have protein spillage, definitely follow up and go see a nephrologist, get the lab work done, do all of that, because you definitely could be having some kidney disease. And you could possibly be further along than what you even want to know. A lot of patients don't find out until they're like stage 3 already,
Yes.
which
Yes.
means that, kidneys have already been, damaged. So,
Yes. And I mean, I think it's so important. And that's why, shows like this, where you are putting out information, are so important, because there are things that just aren't readily available as far as information is concerned on kidney disease. And so
yeah.
it's voices like ours that are helping to get the word out, so that, God forbid, anybody, would have to go through some of the things that we've gone through, and maybe they can catch it and intervene ahead of time, so that they can prolong or even prevent dialysis.
Yeah, absolutely. Prevention is definitely key. Education is definitely key, and I'm a strong, firm believer in it. I wish I would have had a whole lot more education on this stuff instead of being handed a pamphlet and sent home. I wish I had something like a resource such as a show or anything that would have been better than just being handed a piece of paper and then sent home with a
Yes.
diagnosis.
And
But
hearing you say that, it's so important too, because I think about the people that show up into the dialysis facility. And so you crashed into the hospital. They said, okay, you need to start dialysis. They put the fistula or permacath or whatever in.
yeah.
And then you show up that next day or so, expected to be an active participant in your healthcare. Like
Yeah,
that just
exactly.
to me is just, it just does.
And
It's just
you
like you
and
don't
you've
even know
got
what
all
you're
this
walking into.
terminology being just thrown at you, and all these big words, and it's just like, ooh, wow, this is a lot, and I don't even know what you're talking about, and they start using words like phosphorus and potassium and just things that you weren't even looking at, fistulas, grafts, catheters, and then they start using, abbreviations for them and conversation, and you're like, what are you even talking about? So, yeah, it's definitely can be an eye-opening experience. That's why education is huge
It
when you're
is.
battling kidney disease.
It is. And I
So
think patients are more likely to, and I say patients, but I use warriors interchangeably, because to me, patients sometimes just denotes I don't know,
sure,
just gives but I mean, everyone knows what we mean when we say that. Um,
yeah,
I just feel that you almost show up at an unfair advantage for a fight. And
sure,
so it's important for us as people that have gone through it to be that voice. I think
mhm,
sometimes those who are in the chair are more likely to listen to one of us before they would sometimes even the people in their facility or in their doctor's
sure,
offices, because we have
sure,
lived
because we've
experiences.
been there,
Yes,
right? So, and
yes,
that makes a lot of sense.
yes. And that's the
Sharon,
fuel. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the
no,
fuel to my
go ahead.
fire. I think,
Absolutely,
yes, I think about the
Abs-
people sitting in the chair who are feeling helpless, who are feeling hopeless, who have very little information to be in their arsenal to be a comparable dog in the fight, if that makes sense.
mhm,
It's like you almost come into a fight with no armor. And so I think that is the importance of us educating and arming ourselves, and then empowering those that are dealing with it as well, so that they have armor to fight. They have tools to be a part of their own rescue. And so that's yeah,
absolutely,
that's our job,
yeah,
and that's why I started Kindness for Kidneys. It's like to give other people the tools that they need, so at least even though there's a fight going on, you have
sure,
some tools in your toolkit, and something in some arsenal to go and fight on your behalf with.
absolutely. What modality choice did you end up choosing? Was that choice made for you, or did you get that chance to even choose that option?
So I'm one of those individuals who was in denial, even after the diagnosis. So I received the diagnosis in 2006, and then in 2007 they further confirmed the FSGS, and then my kidneys remained pretty stable up until 2011, and my nephrologist said, hey, these numbers are creeping up pretty quickly. I'm going to schedule you to come in and get PD. You're working full time. I think that as a mother, and with your schedule and routine, you would do well with peritoneal dialysis. Well, at that point I was in denial, and my my thoughts are, I'm not doing dialysis, I'm sorry. And he kept warning, Miss Rouse, Miss Rouse, Miss Rouse, please, come get the surgery for peritoneal. It does take some time to heal. And so for the catheter to heal. And so we want to get you in so that you transition immediately to peritoneal. Well, I again, I was in denial. And I tell everyone, usually when you get a kidney disease diagnosis, or even when you hear the word dialysis, a lot of times the person is in denial, or going through a grieving process. And in hindsight, I know that I was going through the grieving process. I was in denial. And so I went to get other opinions, and eventually my numbers got so high I had to be hospitalized for a blood transfusion because my hemoglobin levels plummeted. And while there, they said, we really need to get you on dialysis right away. So Jonathan, I had an opportunity to do peritoneal dialysis, which is more than I would say most warriors would say they had. My doctor was proactive, and he said, hey, you should get on peritoneal dialysis. And because I was in denial, I ended up having to go the emergency route. So they put a permacath in when I was in the hospital after getting the blood transfusion. They had to put a permacath in. I did in-center hemo for about a year, and then I transitioned to doing peritoneal dialysis after that. So I was kind of hard in the head, which is why I'm so adamant about making sure that other people don't go through what I've gone through, and even helping them understand that, yes, you are in the grieving process in all of this, and it's okay. And it's okay to still move forward in this process, and to eventually coming to a place of acceptance.
Absolutely. And I hear so many patients now that are trying to hang on for so long before they have to admit and finally go ahead and get on dialysis. And I hear about their GFR, their EGFR being around, 8%, 5%. And I'm like, oh, and the doctors, they don't want you to end up in an emergency case, where you're rushed to the hospital. And then and basically at that point, you're getting a catheter. I mean, that's just how it's going to be. Unless you've already got a fistula that's matured and everything like that, you're getting a catheter. I mean, that's just the only, choice you're going to get at that point. And, I myself personally, I would never want even my worst enemy to go through that, because it was just so traumatic.
Yes.
And so that's why it's so important to listen to your nephrologist, and let them lead you on that as far as dialysis is concerned. If they're telling you you need dialysis, they're looking at the lab saying this patient needs dialysis, and you better take heed to that, and take that as your warning that that it's time, and it's not always easy. There is there's a mental health aspect to this, and an acceptance period where you have to really accept what's going on. But again, in order to survive, if your kidneys aren't functioning, eventually you're going to need dialysis unless you get a donor. And so I guess let's talk about that. You eventually get off of dialysis, and you received a donor. You want to talk about your donor story?
Absolutely. So after many obstacles, my sister was cleared to be my donor. And so she is my angel to the day. She's a wonderful person. And she basically stepped up without me even having to ask. When I started having kidney concerns and when I started dialysis, she said, hey, I'll go get tested. So we knew that she was a match early on in our process, but we had to fight through to get to the operating table, unfortunately. And that's and I want to put a pin here and also note that sometimes you have to go back for multiple opinions before being cleared for surgery. And so what one hospital may not clear, another may. Well, in our case, we were able to have it at the hospital that we started out in, but my sister had to go through multiple tests and see several doctors. Her hemoglobin levels tended to be on the border. So it's supposed to be started about 11. She was about 10.5. And so with that, they kept questioning her labs, kept questioning, like, oh, we don't know, something could happen to her in the future. We don't know. And so we kept saying, well, what else do we need to do? So she was adamant about giving me her kidney too. And so, because at some point I was like, you know what, don't worry about it, I'm on the list, I'm going to get a kidney, it doesn't have to be yours. And she's like, no, it has to be mine, I know it's supposed to be mine. And so she went and got a bone marrow biopsy at their request, because they wanted to know that her low levels, were her borderline levels, were in fact her normal. And so she did go get the bone marrow biopsy. The doctor said, no, we can't find anything, we've done every test imaginable, that this is just her level here, her hemoglobin level. And so we went to so we had 4 pre-op appointments before, actually 4 dates for our surgery before we finally got to the 5th date and we got accepted and moved forward.
Wow.
So the first date that we had, I developed shingles 2 weeks before the surgery.
Oh, wow.
So we had gone through pre-op, they had cleared us, and then I developed shingles. Not sure where it came from. I don't know if it was stress or what it was, but we were like, what in the world? So they set a new date, and then that's when the hemoglobin became in question. And so it really made us kind of confused, because had I not gotten shingles, we would have gone forward with the surgery the first time. So we were very frustrated by the process, but we understood, they want to make sure that the donor is in optimal shape. So we understood their concern, but we felt like we were doing everything possible and we're still being told no. So she got the bone marrow biopsy. They went back to the board. They said they were still unsure. So they said, well, we want you to come up here to our hospital and see our hematologist, because my sister was going to the hematologist here in our area. And even though we're both in Maryland, we're still about 45 minutes from Johns Hopkins. And so we went up to have her see their hematologist. They wanted to do another bone marrow biopsy. I don't know, Jonathan, if you know how hard a bone marrow, I've never had it, but I hear it's the most difficult biopsy that you can have. And it's because they're digging into your bone and taking a piece of your bone. And so she did that twice for me.
Oh, wow.
Yes, because in her mind, she said, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. And she would stop at nothing in order to get to that transplant table. And so she got the second bone marrow biopsy. There was a time lapse in there. And then eventually it went before the board again and they cleared us. And on our fifth date, we were able to make it to the operating table on December 2nd, 2013. And we were a 6 antigen match. So we were a perfect match. They said all 6 antigens lined up perfectly. And so, that's my kidney donation story. It really was a miracle that we got to the table, because there were times that we felt throughout the process that maybe this isn't meant to be. We were faced with so many obstacles. And so if I could leave a word of encouragement for someone, if you're being told no, to keep going and know that, you will come to a resolve. And so if you're hearing no, you may have to go through some other hoops and jump through some other hoops and go through some other avenues, but don't stop. Because I do know people that once they receive the first no for transplant, they stop and they're just like, they said no, that's it. But sometimes, there may be other circumstances that may work out for you to actually get on the transplant list or be a kidney donor.
Absolutely. And you mentioned this at the beginning of the show. You are a person of faith, and I'm a person of faith as well. Totally believe in God, Jesus, my Savior. So I totally believe in prayer, believe in the power of prayer. And I believe in divine intervention. I definitely believe that your sister, it was just meant to be, that God has a plan. Overall, God has a plan, right? And he's going to have the final say regardless. And so even though there were some obstacles, some stumbling blocks, it happened. And it doesn't always happen the way that we want it to happen or think it's going to happen. Doesn't mean it's going to be an easy plan or an easy road to get there. But God always gets the glory, always gets his way in the end. And that's kind of like what happened with me. I mean, my donor, I never would have thought I'd have been direct donated to from a friend of a family
Wow.
in another state.
Wow.
I just thought I would wait on the list and eventually my kidney would come. And that's what I was hoping and praying for. If you'd have told me, nope, this is how your donor's coming, you're going to end up, with a friend of, a family member's kidney. I would have been like, I don't believe you. But you know
Mhm.
what? God had a plan. And
Mhm.
just so happened that kidney was a direct match for me. And it was free of disease. And it was, and I had potential donors before him before he came along. But for some reason, whatever reason, they were canceled. And it just wasn't meant to be. So it just sounds like to me that your sister, it was just a divine appointment for her to be your donor. What's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Like I said, I at some point, because at the time too, she had a young child. My nephew was, let's see, this was in 2012, so he would have been, he was 2 years old. And so, in my mind, you're a mom to a toddler, you know, just don't worry about it. Don't worry about me. And that was my stance. And so she knew in her heart of hearts she was supposed to be my donor.
Yeah.
And she would stop at nothing. She said, "No, we started this process. We're going to finish this process. I know I'm supposed to be your donor." And we did have some calls in between there for potential kidneys for me, but they didn't pan out. There was two calls
Yeah.
that came in for infants, and then they called back and said, "We're sorry, we found out that this isn't going to work for you." And so
Yeah.
faith definitely kept us going, and we were able to encourage each other in the process, because there were days that I was just like, "Don't worry about it," like, and days that I'm like, "God, what's going on? Why are we continually
Exactly.
denied?" And so staying in faith and just trusting the process, was all we had, and so
Mm-hmm.
it really, I would say though that I'm glad that I had faith because I don't know if I would have
Absolutely.
made it if I didn't operate from a
Oh,
higher power. If I if
amen to
I didn't
that.
know that God was with me, I probably would have given up on the whole thing a long time before
Yeah.
we even got to the table. And so, knowing that I could lean on someone that was greater than I was, that could take on my weakness, was
Mm,
everything and
yes.
priceless. And I
Absolutely.
can't imagine trying to go through that alone without
No.
extra strength from above.
Absolutely. I was blessed. I'm from a background of strong praying women. So my mother was a prayer warrior. She was on her knees for me, and without that type of support and guidance, man, I wouldn't be sitting here right now doing this podcast with you. There's not a doubt in my mind. I mean, I guarantee I would have passed.
Mhm.
But God had a greater plan, and that's why I'm here. I'm using my platform now to help share stories like what we're sharing tonight. This is a very powerful story, and I hope this story gets out there to really encourage some of the other kidney warriors that's waiting on dialysis and waiting for a transplant, and things don't seem like they're working out, and you don't understand. Listen to her story. Listen to our story. It's not always an easy road, but you see how things eventually work themselves out, and God has a plan. He has a plan for you as well. So just hang on and trust the process. Like Sharron was saying, that's really a great word of advice. Just trust the process, even though it seems tough. You just continue to trust the process.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about kindness for kidneys. What are you doing with kindness for kidneys?
So we launched on December 2nd of 2018, and that was our 5-year kidney anniversary. And so I remember sitting in the dialysis chair and just wondering what I could do to give back. Like, you see so much, and I'm sure you can attest to this. You see
Mm-hmm.
so much when you're sitting in the chair, and I would just sit there like, I've got to help. I've got to help people as a result of me sitting here and just seeing what I see, and patients being labeled uncompliant, and there was just a lot. It was a lot, but I
Sure.
knew that I was sitting there for them, that it wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about my journey and what I was going through, but it was about the people that would be impacted as a result of me sitting in the chair. And so many times I would think about things that I wish I had, or that I wish, I could do to help others once I got well. And so that's where Kindness for Kidneys was born on December 2nd of 2018. We had a launch party. We put information out there. We invited kidney organizations to be a part and share what they offer. And so that's how we started. Jonathan, I honestly didn't know that it would pick up speed as fast as it did. But I did know that there was a need for it in the community. And so I think that's why, because I just felt like we are not having conversations about this enough. And my first day walking into the facility, I was just shocked. I'm like, if this is what's going on pretty much within miles of each other, especially in urban areas, why aren't we having conversations about it? Why aren't we talking about this? If African Americans are, most or more likely to end up on dialysis, why aren't we having conversations? Why, and then you hear when you get on dialysis, oh yeah, I have an aunt that's on dialysis. Oh yeah. And I'm like, why did I not know this? And so that was a huge part of why we started. We wanted to educate, encourage, and empower people that were dealing with kidney disease. Those are the areas that I felt needed the most support. Many families were going through it. They were clueless as to how to participate and help their loved one. And so giving them that encouragement, giving the kidney warrior the encouragement and the empowerment to advocate for themselves was our biggest drive. And so as a result, we started, I wanted to do something special by going back to the facility. I feel like I really, while I was on hemodialysis, I really had good care. I think partly too, one, I was young, and two, I was, the one in there asking questions and talking to the technicians and the nurses and the doctors. And so I didn't go in there and just put the cover over my face like I wish I was not here and I just want to leave. Do what you got to do so I can leave. I vowed before I went in there not to do that, because I wanted to be sure that I was an active participant in my care. Not just for me, just the fact that I knew that as a result of my journey, I was going to help someone else. And so when sitting there, I wanted to take the most out of the situation. I honestly felt that I was there for someone in that facility. And, sometimes God will put us in places because there's some people that may never step foot in a church. And so I felt that I was there for someone. And I wanted to be sure that I was an active participant in that process. Of course, this was when I had come on the other side of my grief and come to a place of acceptance. But once I accepted it and I realized that there was some purpose in why I was sitting in the dialysis chair, it really changed my perspective on walking in that facility. Because my mind was made up that I'm going to impact someone here. I don't like what's going on. I don't like the fact that I'm being poked and prodded and just all of those things that come with sitting in the chair. But I knew that I had a purpose for sitting there, and I wanted to make sure I was an active participant and not a hindrance in what God could do to use me. And
absolutely.
So yes, that's how Kindness for Kidneys was born. Our first initiative was going back and providing care packages at my former facility and singing Christmas carols. And the reason that I did that, it was important for me to do it during the holiday, because I feel like when I was sitting in the dialysis chairs, that's when holidays would roll around. I think that's when I would become the most reflective. I would just, I go into a space that, I didn't want to be in sometimes as far as my thought process. And then I wasn't sure if I was going to feel well enough to be a part of the gatherings that my family was having, so I wanted to go back to let them know we're thinking about you. We're praying for you. You can get through this. Look at me. If I can come out, so can you. And so we did that. And from there, it's expanded every year. Every year we expand facilities. During COVID, what we decided to do, instead of going to the facilities, because of course we couldn't go and sing Christmas carols and hand out packages, is that we sent meals to the facility with encouraging words and set up a display in the lobby to
that's awesome.
point them into the direction of resources. We also started support groups. So we had our first support group meeting on March 8th, 2020. And then, as you know, COVID hit the very next week. And so we had sent out surveys to local facilities. We got an idea of where they wanted to have the support group. We had our first meeting March 8th, and lo and behold, COVID shows up the next week. So that kind of put a wrench in our plans to impact the Southern Maryland area. But it really ended up being a blessing in disguise, because then we moved our meetings to Zoom, and now we have people tune in from Arizona and Florida. And so we're able to communicate with each other once a month via this platform. And so
Zoom has been a great resource for COVID. During the COVID time, where a lot of people haven't been able to connect, they were able to utilize Zoom. I think Zoom must have grown a lot with their stock and stuff like that, with all the people that were utilizing platforms such as Zoom, because it seemed like everything was over Zoom, and it was a great way for people to connect that didn't live, in the same state and same city. So it was a great resource to use during Zoom. And do you kind of feel like that Kindness for Kidneys is a underlining ministry for the gospel? I kind of feel like Hope with Jonathan is kind of like a covert ministry. And some people probably think, oh, how's it a ministry? Well, I feel like this is what God called me to do, and this is my purpose. This is my plan. And it is an underlining ministry, because we're sharing stories of hope, and we're trying to give people hope. Do you feel like you're doing the same thing with the Kindness for Kidneys?
Absolutely. I feel like that our organizations are your Hope with Jonathan is the catalyst to have people experience God's love, to give people hope. And that's what God is about, And so I absolutely feel the exact same way. I know that I always tell myself, like, this is so much bigger than you. And I think that's why we have the impact, because it really isn't about Sharron. It really isn't about Kindness for Kidneys. It's about bringing hope and healing to people who are impacted by kidney disease and their families. And so I never want to be in the way of what God is doing, And so whenever I show up anywhere, it's always, I'm not here on my own accord. I'm here to spread love and to also bring hope and healing to people that are dealing with this. And so it wasn't strange that I ended up in that dialysis chair. It didn't take him by surprise. But because I decided to be an active participant and surrender to the process, he was able to use me to be a catalyst for bringing hope, healing, and love to other people. So I'm right there with you in that. I count it an honor and a joy to be able to just be his hands and feet.
Absolutely. And it is an honor. It's an honor to still be here, be alive. And even though I went through a traumatic event, I want to utilize my story for the greater good and spread hope. And I think that's what we've done here today. And I think it's an awesome thing what you're doing with Kindness for Kidneys. And anybody before we close out, anybody you want to send a special shout out to?
Oh, sure. My family, of course, my husband, my daughter, my family. I don't know how we would have made it without our village. And it's just, I think back to the process, and we were all just in survival mode. Like, what needs to be done? Okay, you need to take Isla to school. Okay, we all just pitched in. So I definitely want to give a shout out to my family first, to the listeners here. Thank you all for tuning in. For those that may watch the replay, we see you. We're praying for you. And we pray that you will see this as a chapter in your story and not the whole book. You're just in a chapter. It may be difficult. It may be a difficult chapter. If you think about stories and books and their climaxes and all of those things, this is a chapter in your story. And so you do play a part in how your story ends, whether you think that or not. And so I do want to send a shout out to those that are listening. Thank you so much for joining. A shout out to you, especially Jonathan, for the amazing work that you're doing. And just keep up the good work. Keep doing God's work, and he will do the rest. He will supersede your natural hands. And so I appreciate you. And then to our kidney warriors out there, like, we do this for you. we stand here in proxy for you, knowing that we deserve better in the kidney community and we will get better. And so just want to thank you. And I am honored and privileged to be sitting here and hope with Jonathan. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're spreading hope and healing to those that are impacted by this horrible disease.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I'm humbled by your words, and I appreciate it. What an amazing story you have, and what an incredible advocate you are for kidney disease. And what an awesome resource Kindness for Kidneys is for kidney patients. And we ask that everyone please go check out their website. It is kindnessforkidneys.org is the website. And please go check that out. And if you're wondering at all what their logo looks like, this is their logo. You can't miss it. It's a beautiful logo, as you guys can see. And it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is 2 kidneys there in the shape of a heart.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. I love it. I love it.
Thank
And
you.
so, again, Sharron, I really appreciate you coming on. I hope you guys are finding this video to be informative, and I hope you guys are enjoying what we're doing right here with Hope with Jonathan. And I hope you guys will definitely go check out Kindness for Kidneys and see what they're all about, what they're doing great things in the community. Again, guys, y'all take care and stay safe out there. Remember to spread love, and God bless you. Take care of your kidneys. Have a good night.